Have you ever been so bored at 3 a.m. that you start researching the weirdest stuff imaginable? That happened to me one night. I was scrolling the internet half asleep and I stumbled upon a thread about DXM, a drug found in cough syrup that apparently makes people trip. I had always thought cough syrup just made you drowsy, but as I kept reading, I saw people talking about full-on hallucinations. Some described meeting shadow figures in their room, and others talked about feeling like they were floating outside their own bodies. And then I found the ones that really got to me, stories about people hearing voices that weren't there. At first, I thought they were just messing around, but the deeper I dug, the more I realized this wasn't just some internet myth. People had been using DXM for decades, and some of them claimed they saw the same things over and over. And that's when I knew I had to dig deeper. Today, we're diving into the DXM Robotripping iceberg, a world of strange experiences and terrifying side effects about how a common over-the-counter drug can become a portal to something else. Please consider subscribing. I've spent countless sleepless nights researching all of these topics to bring you this video. Also, follow my Instagram and join my Discord for fun. And without further ado, let's dive into this Robotripping iceberg. DXM. Dextromethorphan, commonly known as DXM, is an over-the-counter cough suppressant found in various cold and flu medications. It was first introduced in the 1950s as a non-addictive alternative to codeine, which was previously used in cough syrups but came with a high potential for abuse. By the way, codeine iceberg coming soon as well. DXM works by suppressing the cough reflex in the brain, making it effective for treating like colds and respiratory infections. Unlike codeine, DXM is not an opioid, though it affects the brain in unique ways that can lead to dissociation and hallucinations when taken in high doses. In therapeutic amounts, it's effective at making you stop coughing, but when abused, it produces effects similar to dissociatives like ketamine and PCP. This has led to a widespread underground culture of recreational DXM use, commonly referred to as robotripping, which leads us to our next entry, robotripping. Robotripping is the slang term for getting high on DXM, named after the brand Robitussin, one of the most well-known cough syrups containing the drug. When taken in excess amounts, DXM induces a state of intoxication that can range from mild euphoria and enhanced music appreciation to full-blown dissociation. The experience is often characterized by a robotic or floaty sensation, slurred speech, and difficulty walking, which contributes to that robotic aspect of the name. While some users find the effects enjoyable, others report extreme confusion, paranoia, or nausea, making the experience unpredictable. The culture surrounding robotripping has existed since at least the 1990s, with the rise of internet forums dedicated to trip reports, dosage guides, and discussions about the strangest experiences users have had while under DXM's influence. Plateau system. One of the most defining aspects of DXM is its plateau system, which describes different levels of intoxication based on dosage. Unlike most drugs, which have a more linear increase in effects, DXM produces distinct stages that alter the experience drastically. The first plateau, typically reached with a dose of around 100 to 200 milligrams, feels like a mild stimulant high with increased sociability and energy. The second plateau, at around 200 to 400 milligrams, introduces a more noticeable drunken or dissociative feeling, with the movement feeling wavy or sluggish. The third plateau, 400 to 600 milligrams, is where users often experience full dissociation, out-of-body sensations, and visual hallucinations. The fourth plateau, beyond 600 milligrams, is an extreme dissociative state where users may lose connection with their body and surroundings entirely, experiencing profound hallucinations or even ego death. These plateaus make DXM unique compared to other recreational substances, as the experience can change drastically depending on the dose taken. Common DXM products. DXM is found in many over-the-counter medications, but not all products are safe for recreational use. The most well-known brands include Robitussin, Delsum, and Coricidin cough and cold, or triple Cs. Robitussin contains DXM in various forms, with some versions mixed with other active ingredients like guaifenesin, which can cause severe nausea. Delsum is unique because it contains only DXM, but in an extended release formula, meaning the effects can take longer to hit and they last a lot longer. Triple Cs are widely abused but extremely dangerous because because they contain an antihistamine that becomes toxic in high doses. Many DXM products also contain acetaminophen, a pain reliever that can cause fatal liver damage when taken in excess amounts. So due to these risks, users who seek to trip on DXM often carefully select products that contain only dextromethorphan or DXM as the ingredient. And yeah, because like, if you want to take like a third plateau high, get like 500 milligrams, you're going to take, depending on what you do, maybe 15 pills, right? But taking 15 pills that also include acetaminophen or Tylenol or, the cofenicicin or whatever can fuck up your body. But DXM is like safe for your body to take that much of. So, people who trip, they make sure it's only DXM because if there's other shit in it, it can like mess you up. Effects of DXM. The effects of DXM vary widely depending on the dose, individual metabolism, and whether it's taken alone or combined with other substances. In low doses, it acts as a mild stimulant, creating a sense of relaxation, increased sociability, and euphoria. As the dose increases, the drug's associative properties become more apparent, leading to a feeling of detachment from the body, slowed movement, and impaired coordination. Higher doses can cause intense visual and auditory hallucinations, a feeling of floating, or even a complete break from reality. Many users report feeling like they're in a dream as objects take on an unreal or cartoonish quality. Some experience synesthesia, where senses blur together, such as tasting colors or hearing textures. Negative side effects, though, include nausea, dizziness, confusion, and paranoia, and sometimes, in extreme cases, psychotic episodes where users struggle to distinguish hallucinations from reality. And the overall experience can range from euphoric and introspective to terrifying and overwhelming. DXM versus other dissociatives. DXM is a part of a class of drugs known as dissociatives, which also includes ketamine, PCP, and nitrous oxide. These substances work by blocking NMDA receptors in the brain, disrupting normal communication between neurons and creating feelings of detachment from reality. Compared to ketamine, DXM has a longer duration and often produces more intense mental effects, but it lacks the sedative qualities that make ketamine popular for medical and therapeutic use. PCP, on the other hand, is much more potent and unpredictable, with a higher risk of violent behavior and extreme paranoia. Nitrous oxide, also known as whippets, provides a much shorter lasting dissociative experience, often lasting like only a few minutes. And then while DXM shares similarities with these drugs, it's unique due to its plateau system and its availability as an over-the-counter medication, making it both more accessible and more widely abused than many other dissociatives. DXM dangers. Although DXM is legal and widely available, it comes with significant risks, especially when taken in large amounts. One of the biggest dangers is serotonin syndrome, a potentially fatal condition that occurs when DXM is combined with antidepressants or other drugs that increase serotonin levels. Symptoms include high fever, rapid heartbeats, seizures, and a loss of muscle control. Another major risk is overdosing on other active ingredients found in DXM-containing products, like we talked about earlier, like acetaminophen, which can, cause liver damage. Chronic DXM abuse have been linked to long-term cognitive impairment, memory loss, and persistent dissociation, with some users developing HPBD, or hallucinogen persisting perception disorder, which is a condition where visual disturbances and hallucinations persist even after stopping drug use. Despite its availability, DXM, it's safe if you know what you're doing, so it's probably unsafe for people who don't research it. But I'm not advocating any drug abuse, okay, YouTube? I'm not advocating it officially at all. DXM and CYP2D6. One of the lesser known factors influencing DXM trips is the enzyme CYP2D6, which plays a crucial role in how the body metabolizes the drug. Some people are poor metabolizers, which means that their bodies process DXMs very slowly, causing a much longer and more intense trip. Others can be ultra-rapid metabolizers, breaking down DXM so quickly that they experience weaker effects even at high doses. This variability means that two people can take the exact same dose and then have completely different experiences. Some users even experiment with CYP2D6 inhibitors, such as grapefruit juice, to slow down DXM metabolism and extend the trip duration, though this can increase the risk of overdose. But you can't really overdose on DXM unless you take like 1,000 milligrams or more. Unless you combine it with other stuff, like I said, like the SSRIs or acetaminophen. But again, don't do it. DXM versus DXO. When consumed, DXM is converted in the liver into its active metabolite DXO, dextromethorphan. While DXM itself has mild stimulant and opioid-like properties, DXO is responsible for most of the dissociative and hallucinogenic effects. The ratio of DXM to DXO in the bloodstream can affect the nature nature of the trip, with users preferring instant release products because they lead to faster DxO conversion, while some other users prefer the extended release effects of other kinds of DXM like DXM, which can result in a longer, more drawn out dissociative experience. And that was layer 1, guys. Let's get into layer 2, where it gets a little bit more disturbing and interesting. Starting with third-person perspective. One of the strangest effects of DXM, especially in higher doses, is the third-person perspective, where users feel like they're watching themselves from an outside vantage point. This isn't just feeling detached in a casual way. It's as if your mind has literally left the driver's seat of your body and is now spectating from a different position, almost like playing a third-person video game. Some people describe it as a floating sensation, like they're hovering slightly behind and above their own body, observing their movements in an almost cinematic way. Others say it feels more like they've become a puppeteer, controlling their own body from some distant, disconnected point. Movements don't feel natural anymore. Walking, reaching for objects, even speaking, everything feels clunky, robotic, or laggy, as if there's a delay between intention and action. For me personally, I always feel it as the puppeteer kind, and like what I just said about reaching for things and it feels clunky or laggy, I remember one time I jumped on my bed during like a high second plat high, I think, and I could feel the bed sheets on my face like before I saw it. Like I could feel it while my head was still seeing myself like a few feet back. Like everything feels laggy. You might turn your head, but it feels like you're watching someone else do it. Some users even report that their own voice sounds foreign, as if they're hearing a recording of themselves instead of speaking in real time. This experience can be fascinating for some and deeply unsettling for others. When it kicks in unexpectedly, it can lead to a sense of panic. Like, am I real? Am I actually in control of myself? These moments can spiral into existential dread, where people feel trapped in their own mind, unable to reconnect with their body in like a normal way. Others embrace it, finding it meditative or even spiritual, like they're viewing themselves from an enlightened outside perspective. Either way, it's one of the defining characteristics of a DXM trip, and once you've experienced it, it's hard to forget. The DXM hole. People familiar with ketamine know about the K-hole, a state of extreme dissociation where users feel completely detached from their body, sometimes floating in a void or experiencing bizarre dreamlike visions. DXM has something similar, but it's more chaotic and disorienting, at least often. The DXM hole happens when the trip becomes so intense that reality completely dissolves. It's not just feeling disconnected, it's total immersion in a different state of consciousness, often one that doesn't really make sense in human terms. People describe feeling like they've left their body entirely, no longer existing in the real world. Some report falling through infinite empty space, merging with the universe, or becoming a non-human entity, like a machine, a ball of energy, or even a god. And that last thing that I put in there, you feel like a god, that's what I feel like every time. Makes me feel more like a demon, but that might just be my emotions and weird shit. But you know how like you can't describe sight to a blind person because it's just so like there's no way for them to even reference it because it's just so different than anything they've experienced because it's a whole different like sense. That's how being on DXM feels for me. Like there's no way to really describe it. It feels like you are in a different type of reality where there's different laws of gravity, different laws of physics, different laws of emotion, different laws of everything. Like it feels like a whole different type of world, like a whole different type of living. Anyway, sorry, back to the DXM hole. I'm sorry, I went on a rant on that one. Unlike a K-hole, which can feel dreamlike and peaceful, the DXM hole is often more confusing and overwhelming, which I'm saying from research because I've never actually personally gotten to the DXM hole. But I'm not advocating you to do DXM, by the way. Reality doesn't just fade, it fractures when you're in a DXM hole. Time stops working in a logical way. You might experience events out of order, loop through the same few seconds over and over, or even feel like you've been trapped in the trip for eternity. There are reports of people forgetting they ever even took a drug in the first place and genuinely believing that they've died or gone insane. Some users describe seeing bizarre geometric structures, futuristic cityscapes, or endless empty corridors that seem to stretch infinitely in every direction. Others feel like they've downloaded information from the universe itself, understanding things that they can't even begin to explain once they sober up. But for many, the DXM hole is terrifying, a place where thoughts spin out of control, the self dissolves, and nothing feels real anymore. It's the kind kind of experience that can change the way someone views existence itself, for better or for worse. Walking like a robot. If you've ever seen someone high on DXM trying to walk, you know exactly where this one comes from. One of the most iconic physical effects of DXM is robotic movement, where users stumble around stiffly, dragging their legs in slow, exaggerated steps. It's part of why the term robotripping exists in the first place, because high doses of DXM make you move like a malfunctioning android. This happens because DXM interferes with motor control in a big way. It disrupts the way signals are sent between the brain and the body, making even the simplest actions feel unnatural and sluggish. Walking feels like wading through waist-deep water. Lifting a hand to scratch your face takes an eternity. Your arms and legs feel disconnected, like you're controlling them through a delay. Some people describe it as moving frame by frame, like a character in a glitchy video game. And I am one of those some people. The higher the dose, the worse it gets. Some users find themselves crawling on the floor because standing upright is impossible. Others say that their legs feel too heavy to lift, as if gravity has doubled its strength. There's also the issue of balance. DXM messes with the inner ear, making it really easy to tip over. This is why some people wake up with unexplained bruises after a DXM trip, because at some point they probably fall, but their dissociative brain just didn't register the impact. What's even weirder is that some people embrace it and love it, and some people hate it. I fuck with it heavy, guys. DXM blindness. At lower doses, DXM can make vision blurry and slightly distorted, like looking through heat waves or fogged up glass. But at higher doses, especially on the third or fourth plateau, vision can start breaking down entirely. Some people describe it as black splotches appearing in their field of view, slowly growing until everything is just pure darkness. Others say it's like static on a TV screen, kind of, where reality becomes fuzzy and pixelated until they can't make out anything at all. Now, I just want to say too that everything here is from research because I have never experienced this personally. This happens because DXM messes with sensory processing, including how the brain interprets visual input. In extreme cases, the brain just stops bothering to process visual information entirely, leading to a temporary state of actual blindness. And the weird part is that users who experience DXM blindness often say that it doesn't scare them in the moment. They just kind of accept it as part of the trip, like it's not scary. It's only once they sober up that they realize how insane it was to be walking around and completely unable to see. DXM psychosis. For most people, a DXM trip ends when the drug wears off, but for a small percentage of heavy users, the effects don't just completely go away. This is where DXM psychosis comes in, a state where people who have used DXM excessively start experiencing delusions, paranoia, and hallucinations that persist even when sober. At first, it might start with mild paranoia, a lingering feeling that something isn't quite right or that people are watching them even when they know they aren't. Then it can escalate into full-blown psychotic symptoms. Some users begin to hear voices, see shadowy figures, or believe in strange, unshakable delusions, like thinking they've unlocked hidden knowledge about the universe or that they are trapped inside a simulation. One of the scariest things about DXM psychosis is how sudden and irreversible it can be. Some users who have binged on DXM for days or weeks report reaching a point where they can't tell the difference between like reality and hallucination. And then other people develop long-term paranoia. It's suspected that prolonged NMDA receptor blocking, which DXM does, can cause long-term disruption in how the brain processes reality. But again, I said long-term, meaning it has to be like chronic DXM abuse, like taking it every day for like weeks. But the general rule, again, not advocating DXM use at all, but the general rule for safety that I personally follow, but I'm not advocating because you shouldn't do it, is you should wait however many weeks, whatever plateau you went to. So like if you went to plateau 3, you should wait 3 weeks before taking any DXM at all. So just make sure that you don't get a cough or a cold, because then you can't take it at all for 3 weeks. The white void. There's a recurring hallucination reported by high-dose DXM users, a place known as the white void. It's exactly what it sounds like, an endless, featureless white space that stretches infinitely in every direction, like that one little fucker thing from SpongeBob. People who end up here describe it as a total absence of anything. No walls, no floor, floor, no ceiling, just white nothingness. Unlike a regular hallucination that interacts with the real world, the white void feels separate, like an actual location that exists beyond reality. Some people compare it to like being trapped inside an empty computer simulation where the code for the environment hasn't loaded yet. What's even stranger is that multiple users describe it in the exact same way, even though they've never spoken to each other. Some say that they float in the void, while others feel like they're standing on solid ground. For some, it's calming, like a state of pure mental clarity, while for others, it's terrifying. And some users even claim that they feel like they were stuck there for years, which sounds scary as fuck. I hope I never get that shit. Machine elves. Anyone who knows about DMT has probably heard about machine elves, strange alien-like beings that people claim to meet in DMT trips. But what's weird is that some DXM users report seeing very similar entities in high-dose trips. Unlike DMT elves, which are often described as playful or mischievous, DXM entities tend to be colder, more distant, and more mechanical. Some users say that they encounter shadowy figures with glowing eyes, geometric, shifting beings, or even robotic creatures that, quote, download information into their minds. And then others describe them as emotionless digital gods that seem to exist outside of time and space. What makes this even creepier is that people keep seeing the same types of beings even across different experiences. A few even claim that these entities like tell them things about their future. And some people just hear like coded messages that don't make sense when they sober up because it was just all in their head. DXM and sleep paralysis. Sleep paralysis is when your body is asleep but your mind is awake, leaving you completely unable to move. It often comes with terrifying hallucinations like shadowy figures, demons, or the feeling of something pressing down on your chest. Normally it happens randomly, but DXM seems to trigger it at an alarmingly high rate. Many users report feeling like or waking up frozen, their bodies completely unresponsive while their minds are still trapped in that bizarre dissociated state of the trip. The hallucinations can be intensely vivid. Some see shadow people or hands grabbing on them, and some experience a full-on possession feeling, where they feel like something is taking control of their body. There are also cases where users report waking up in sleep paralysis multiple times in a row, convinced they finally escaped, only to realize that they're still stuck in the trip. And this false, like, awakening loop can be horrifying, because I've had that one before, where I wake up and I'm like, oh, the trip's over, thank God. And then I stand up and it's like, oh, fuck, never mind. But I don't get the sleep paralysis thing. Why DXM causes this isn't completely understood, but one theory is that DXM disrupts REM sleep, making it more likely for a person to wake up in their dreams. Another theory is that DXM's dissociative effects create a dream state while the body remains paralyzed. But anyway, just if you take DXM late at night, be prepared, because sleep paralysis is one of the most common and most feared side effects. I don't know, I take Benadryl whenever I take DXM. I take like how much DXM and then I take like a Benadryl or two, like just 25-50 milligrams, because it helps with the itch. I get the robo itch really bad, and also it helps me like be able to like fall asleep pretty soon so that I don't have to like live the trip. DXM plus weed equals insane. Combining DXM with weed is one of the most common DXM combos, and for good reason. It boosts the dissociative effect significantly, making the trip stronger, longer, and way more immersive. Weed seems to enhance the dream-like visual side of a DXM trip. Colors look more intense, hallucinations become clearer and more stable, and a bunch of other shit. However, it also increases the risk of paranoia and looping thoughts. And that's the end of Layer 2, guys. Let's get straight into Layer 3. I'm excited. DXM dependence. While most people imagine DXM as something you try once or twice out of curiosity, for a certain group of users, it becomes much more than that. It becomes a habit and sometimes a full-blown addiction. DXM dependence works a little differently than addiction to classic substances like alcohol or opioids. It doesn't produce intense physical withdrawal symptoms the way heroin or alcohol does, but instead it hooks into the user's brain on a psychological level. They chase the dissociation, the escape from reality, the numbness, and the weird comfort that comes from being disconnected from their emotions and surroundings. Some dependent users get into the habit of taking DXM daily or near daily for months or years. This isn't just casually sipping a bit of cough syrup. We're talking about consuming hundreds, sometimes even thousands of milligrams per day. As tolerance builds, the user needs more and more to feel the same effects, pushing them deeper into dangerous territory. Over time, their brains and personality start to revolve entirely around the substance. Normal life becomes dull and numb and meaningless without it. Many long-term users report feeling like real life life is gray when they're sober, almost like the dissociation permanently rewired their emotional baseline. Eventually, DXM-dependent users may experience full personality shifts, becoming more isolated, paranoid, depressed, and cognitively foggy. Once they're deep into dependence, quitting becomes extremely difficult, not because they fear withdrawal, but because they fear being fully present in a reality they've spent years trying to escape from. Brain damage? One of the scariest risks surrounding long-term DXM abuse is something a lot of heavy users whisper about: potential brain damage. The research here is murky, partly because DXM is legally available and not as heavily studied as controlled dissociatives like ketamine or PCP. But there are plenty of case studies and self-reports that suggest long-term high-dose DXM may cause lasting neurological problems. Users who have binged for months or years often report symptoms like extreme brain fog, poor memory, difficulty concentrating, impaired motor function, and emotional numbness. Some describe it as their brain permanently short-circuiting, as if they're stuck in a semi-dissociated, foggy headspace even when sober. Coordination issues may linger. Complex problem-solving becomes harder. Processing information slows down. In extreme cases, some users compare the damage to something resembling early dementia. There's also growing concern about NMDA receptor damage. Since DXM blocks NMDA receptors, which regulate normal brain signaling, long-term abuse may leave certain neural pathways dysfunctional even after stopping. And while not everyone who abuses DXM ends up like this, for heavy users who pushed doses into the thousands of milligrams range for extended periods, the cognitive damage does seem disturbingly real. Dissociative PTSD. This is one of the darker, less commonly discussed outcomes of DXM abuse. Trauma-like symptoms that linger pretty long after the trips are over. For some users, especially those who have had terrifying high-dose experiences, like being trapped in the DXM hole or experiencing full psychotic breaks, the psychological aftermath feels like PTSD. They report flashbacks to disturbing visuals they saw while tripping. Everyday objects can randomly trigger intrusive memories of terrifying moments from their dissociative experiences. Even small triggers, like a certain song, a type of lighting, or even silence, can bring back overwhelming waves of anxiety or dread. Some users describe feeling permanently damaged afterward, like their mind was stretched too far and never fully returned to its original state. In severe cases, dissociative PTSD from DXM can make people afraid to even sleep, since vivid, involuntary DXM-like visions may return in their dreams. DXM versus NMDA receptors. To understand why DXM has all these strange effects, you have to look at its interaction with the NMDA receptors in the brain. These receptors regulate how neurons communicate with each other, especially when it comes to things like learning, memory, and perception of reality. DXM works by blocking these NMDA receptors, which essentially throws a wrench into the brain's normal processing. When NMDA receptors are blocked, signals don't transmit properly. That's why DXM causes dissociation. The brain is no longer receiving sensory information like it should, so your sense of self, time, and space, and even your own body start to fall apart. This is the same general mechanism shared by other dissociatives like ketamine and PCP, though each drug interacts with the receptors slightly differently, leading to their unique profiles. The longer these receptors stay blocked, as in high-dose DXM trips, the more scrambled your perception becomes, eventually leading to full detachment from reality, loss of identity, or the infamous whole states. Serotonin syndrome. This is one of the deadliest risks of using DXM, especially for people who mix it with other drugs that affect serotonin levels. DXM doesn't just mess with NMDA receptors, it also boosts serotonin, somewhat acting like an SSRI antidepressant in higher doses. This becomes extremely dangerous when combined with other serotoninogenic drugs like SSRIs, MAOIs, MDMA, or even certain supplements. When too much serotonin builds up in the body, it triggers serotonin syndrome, which could be life-threatening. Symptoms start with things like agitation, tremors, confusion, muscle rigidity, and rapid heartbeat. But if the syndrome escalates, it can lead to seizures, hyperthermia, which is dangerously high body temperature, or even death. The terrifying part is that DXM users don't even realize this risk exists. Someone casually taking their prescribed antidepressant might think popping a bottle of cough syrup is no big deal, until their body starts overheating and convulsing. And because many ER doctors are less familiar with recreational DXM use, serotonin syndrome cases involving DXM are sometimes misdiagnosed until it's too late. DXM God Mode syndrome. This is a strange psychological phenomenon some DXM users experience where they become convinced they're invincible, immortal, or omnipotent while tripping. During high-dose states, especially when trapped in the DXM hole, users may feel like they've unlocked secrets of the universe. Time no longer applies. Death feels meaningless. They perceive themselves as existing outside the limitations of human life. Not really, but I've been there. Ha! What a good joke I just said. That shit's fire. I mean, hypothetically, I think it would be pretty fire, but we shouldn't do drugs. The problem is, for certain individuals, this delusion doesn't fully wear off after the trip ends. Some users walk away from repeated high-dose DXM trips with deeply embedded beliefs that they're invulnerable, chosen, or somehow cosmically special. This can feed into pretty risky behavior. Like, this is like, you only get that whenever you do it like a lot. Like, if you trip like every fucking night or some shit, you're already gonna fucking die, but not good. Permanent tripping, HPPD. Imagine this, you come down from a DXM trip, but the visual distortions stay with you forever. This is essentially what happens with HPPD, or hallucinogen persisting perception disorder. It's rare but real, and while it's mostly talked about with drugs like LSD or mushrooms, there's a growing pile of anecdotal evidence that heavy DXM use can cause it too. People with HPPD describe symptoms like visual snow, like looking at a staticky TV screen, ghosting, trails following moving objects, halos around lights, and increased floaters in their vision. Colors might look overly bright or distorted, and night driving becomes almost impossible. In extreme cases, users report feeling like they're slightly tripping all of the time. DXM binge horror stories. A one-time DXM trip might last 6 to 8 hours, sometimes 12 at high doses. But some users push it way further, engaging in multi-day binges where they redose over and over, trying to maintain the high without ever sobering up. This isn't just like recreational drinking or smoking weed. A DXM binge can rapidly turn into a living nightmare. As the trip drags on, sleep deprivation starts kicking in, layering confusion and hallucinations on top of the dissociation. The body becomes exhausted, but the mind is too fractured to rest. Users stop eating, they become dehydrated, their skin gets clammy. Reality peels away until they're caught in a permanent loop of false awakenings, seeing shadow people and hearing phantom voices. Some who have survived binges report losing days, waking up on the floor malnourished and dirty with no idea how long they've been out of it. Others find themselves in hospitals, restrained to beds, treated for organ failure, dehydration, or psychosis. A few never recover mentally. The Purple Room. Some trips are so strange and specific that they start to feel universal. One of the weirdest recurring motifs in deep DXM trips is what users call the Purple Room. It's not a real room, of course. It's more like a hallucinated space, an endless, dimly lit room bathed in deep purple light. Users who end up here often describe it as a sort of waiting room for lost souls, eerily empty except for them. Some see shadowy figures lurking in the corners. Others feel like they're being observed by something unseen. Time doesn't move normally in the Purple Room. People have said that they feel trapped there for hours, days, or what seems like eternity, without any clear sense of how they got in or how to leave. Interestingly, this hallucination is reported by DXM users who have never heard of the Purple Room before their trip, suggesting there's something about the deep dissociation DXM induces that naturally generates this kind of space in the mind. Is it just brain static, or are they tapping into some shared hallucinated dimension? No one knows, but people who have been there don't easily forget it. DXM unalive cases. Unfortunately, DXM's dissociative and hallucinogenic properties aren't always about exploration and weird visuals. For some, especially those already struggling with mental health issues, DXM can push them over the edge. When you're in a high-dose trip, emotions can become magnified. Feelings of emptiness, hopelessness, or existential despair can balloon into something unbearable. Some users describe feeling completely disconnected from reality. Some users describe feeling completely disconnected from humanity, like they've already died and are just watching the world from the outside. died. In that state, the idea of actual death can start to seem irrelevant or even attractive. There have been multiple reports of people attempting or committing self-unalive while under the influence of DXM. In some cases, users were deep in psychosis, convinced they needed to escape the loop or reset reality. In others, they simply gave up after days of relentless, inescapable dissociation and depression. Basically, never ever trip without a friend with you. Or, don't trip at all, actually. So basically, don't do drugs. So DXM itself is hard on the body at high doses, but the real killer is what comes with it: acetaminophen. Many over-the-counter DXM products, like regular Robotripping, are loaded with acetaminophen, and when you take massive recreational doses, you're also overdosing on that Tylenol. This leads to very bad liver damage. It's bad, but this isn't really that big of a deal because anyone who actually ever trips on DXM, everybody knows to buy stuff that's pure DXM with no other active ingredients. I at least hope that nobody's out here tripping on anything that has anything other than DXM in it as well, like Gofficin or whatever. DXM plus PCP similarity. If you're wondering how bad a really high dose DXM trip can get, well, some people who've experienced both compare it directly to PCP. PCP is infamous for its ability to induce violent psychosis, profound dissociation, and bizarre, often dangerous behavior. While DXM is usually a bit softer than PCP, pushing DXM into very high doses, like 1,000 milligrams or more, can start mimicking the intensity and unpredictability of PCP. Users at that level report complete loss of body control, severe dissociation, violent hallucinations, and sometimes amnesia about what they did during the trip. It can turn into a kind of waking nightmare where nothing feels real and impulses are impossible to control. Most recreational users never push it that far, but those who have and survived often swear they'd never do it again. Alright guys, that was Layer 3. Now let's get into Layer 4. DXM and alien contact. One of the stranger reports that comes up again and again among high-dose DXM users is this eerie feeling of contact with non-human entities. Some describe them explicitly as aliens, others call them beings, guides, or watchers. What makes these experiences so bizarre isn't just that people hallucinate, it's how often the descriptions overlap across totally different people who have never met. Unlike the playful DMT elves, DXM entities are often described as cold, clinical, distant. They may appear as tall, shadowy figures with geometric features, bright eyes in total darkness, or entirely amorphous beings of lighter energy. And by the way, guys, that was not a reference to the best band of all time. Many users report a powerful sense these entities are examining them, downloading information, or observing their consciousness like some kind of experiment. In some extreme reports, users say the entities communicate, either telepathically or through weird symbolic visions, sometimes sharing knowledge that feels profound while tripping, but becomes incomprehensible once sober. No one knows whether this is just a product of dissociation warping perception, or if high-dose DXM taps into some kind of shared hallucination template in the human brain. Out-of-body astral projection. DXM is one of the few substances that consistently produces out-of-body experiences, or OBEs, but only in heavy users. When you reach higher plateaus, especially the third and fourth, your sense of physical presence can completely detach from your actual body. Some people describe floating above themselves, watching their own body breathe. Others feel like they've left entirely, traveling through invisible tunnels, alternate dimensions, or distant locations. A handful of users swear they visited places they later recognized in real life, though whether that's real or a retroactive hallucination is impossible to say. The OBEs on DXM feel very different from dreams or normal hallucinations because there's often a strong sense of clarity and presence. Even though you know you left your body, you still feel like you. For some, it's peaceful and awe-inspiring. But for others, it's terrifying, because the longer you stay outside yourself, the more you start fearing that you won't be able to return. The grid pattern. This is another strange visual phenomenon many DXM users report during deep trips. The grid pattern. Essentially, reality starts looking like it's made of invisible mesh or wireframes, kind of like seeing the structure behind the simulation. Users describe seeing crisscrossing lines stretching across their entire visual field, sometimes pulsing or shifting as they move. In some cases, the grid overlays real objects. In others, it becomes the only thing they see, like standing inside a giant digital lattice. Some theorize that DXM's interference with NMDA receptors cause the brain to literally visualize its own perceptual processing glitches, a bit like seeing behind the scenes of how your brain renders reality. Others see the grid as something much stranger, proof they've broken through to the architecture beyond and behind existence itself. DXM and time distortion. Time distortion is everywhere on DXM, and the deeper you go, the more extreme it becomes. Minutes feel like hours, hours feel like seconds, but it's not just normal time dilation like you get on weed or shrooms. Time itself seems to stop behaving altogether. Some users experience time loops where they relive the same moment endlessly. Others feel like they've existed for thousands of years inside a single 6-hour trip. There are cases where users lose track of cause and effect entirely, unable to tell which thoughts came first or whether events even happened at all. One time, I'm not gonna say for sure, but hypothetically as a joke, I went to the bathroom to throw up, but then even to this day, I don't know if I actually did or if I just had the thought of it and I then remembered it as a memory. Because kind of part of how it feels is that everything kind of feels like a memory, everything feels like just a dream or a thought, that's how reality feels. So I don't know if I actually threw up or if it was just an idea I had and I visualized it in my head at the time, because I can visualize it now. But anyway, I'm yapping. If you want to hear me yap, come join my Discord server where I'll talk a lot. Okay. At its most extreme, some report eternity trips, the terrifying sensation that they've permanently exited linear time and will now exist indefinitely inside the trip, unable to return to their previous life. The terror comes not from pain, but from the existential realization that they may be trapped forever. DXM-induced schizophrenia. Here's where things get very serious. There's a growing suspicion among psychiatrists and some long-term users that chronic DXM abuse can trigger latent schizophrenia in people who are already genetically vulnerable. Schizophrenia itself often involves symptoms very similar to high-dose DXM: paranoia, hallucinations, disorganized thinking, emotional blunting, and dissociation. Schizophrenia itself often involves symptoms very similar to high-dose DXM: paranoia, hallucinations, disorganized thinking, emotional blunting, and dissociation. When a person with genetic risk factors takes large doses of DXM repeatedly, they may effectively kickstart the full onset of psychotic illness. There are multiple reported cases of people developing full-blown schizophrenia after long-term DXM binges, but we don't really know for sure if it causes it or not. DXM cults. This one sounds wild, but yes, there have been real cases of online DXM cults. In some corners of the internet, especially back in the late 2000s and early 2010s, small groups of DXM users formed tight-knit communities built around shared beliefs that the drug offered spiritual enlightenment, hidden knowledge, or access to higher planes of reality. These groups often mix DXM use with conspiracy theories, pseudoscience, or even quasi-religious systems. Some believe that high-dose DXM trips allow access to secret dimensions, or that the dissociation frees the soul from the prison of physical existence. Others view it as a kind of training for the afterlife or a tool to awaken dormant psychic powers. DXM in parallel universes. Another repeating theme in trip reports is DXM opening doors to parallel realities. During these intense trips, many users report being transported to other versions of Earth, alternate timelines, or entirely foreign universes where the laws of physics don't apply. Sometimes these realities are beautiful: glowing cities, infinite landscapes, impossible architecture. Other times they're deeply unsettling, filled with strange beings, empty voids, or twisted versions of familiar places. The sense of realism in these experiences is shockingly strong, as if users aren't just hallucinating but actively visiting these alternate realms. DXM shadow people. The shadow people phenomenon isn't unique to DXM. It appears in sleep paralysis, other dissociatives, and psychosis. But DXM users report it with unsettling frequency. During trips, especially at night or in dimly lit rooms, users often see dark humanoid figures lurking in the corners. These figures usually don't interact directly, but just simply stand and observe. Some users report feeling their presence even when they can't visually see them, describing a heavy, oppressive sense that something is watching. Sometimes these shadow figures are completely silent. Other times they whisper incomprehensible things. Some trip reports even describe dozens of shadow people crowding around the user's bed, watching silently as the trip spirals deeper. Scary as fuck, bro. I've never seen that. And why would I? I don't do drugs. Hey guys, don't actually do actual drugs. This shit, be super fucking careful. Do what feels safe. Be careful. Don't do drugs, Tussin Angels. While many DXM entities are cold or neutral, some users report encounters with Tussin Angels, for like Robotussin, otherworldly beings that appear benevolent, calming, and protective. These angels often emerge during deep trips when the user is struggling emotionally or physically. They may appear as bright lights, soft glowing figures, or even disembodied voices offering comfort, guidance, or reassurance. Some users interpret them as manifestations of their subconscious trying to calm them during overwhelming moments. Others believe they're actual spiritual guides or guardians. Unlike the shadow people or alien entities, Tussin Angels typically inspire peace rather than terror, though the sudden appearance of any hallucinated being can still be deeply surreal. Brain damage cover-up? Here's where things start getting very conspiracy heavy. Some in the DXM community believe that the long-term dangers of DXM are actually being downplayed by pharmaceutical companies or health authorities. They argue that because DXM is so widely available and so profitable as a cold medicine, there's no real incentive for large-scale studies to investigate whether chronic recreational use causes irreversible brain damage. Some even suspect data is being intentionally suppressed to protect profits. Whether this is true or just paranoid speculation, the reality is that very little formal research exists on heavy recreational DXM use. Most of what we know comes from scattered case studies, online forums, and self-reports, leaving plenty of room for fear, rumor, and dark speculation. Dextroverse forums. Before Reddit, Discord, and TikTok dominated drug culture, there was Dextroverse, the infamous online forum that essentially became the epicenter of DXM knowledge and culture throughout the 2000s. Here, users shared trip reports, dosage guides, harm reduction advice, wild stories, and plenty of myths. It was part support group, part trip report archive, and part cult-like subculture. Many of the terms, warning stories, and shared lore still floating around the DXM community today trace directly back to the Dextroverse. While the original site eventually got shut down, it still remains pretty legendary among older DXM users, and its archives are still around. Alright guys, that was layer 4. Now, let's do layer 5. Starting with DXM MK Ultra theories. Now, by the way, before we start this next layer, make sure you still got some water, make sure you still got a snack, make sure you're still, hanging out, doing good, stay comfy, and let's get into it. So here is where the conspiracy brain really kicks in. Some believe that DXM was secretly tested or used in mind control experiments, possibly tied to the infamous MK Ultra program, the CIA's real-life project during the 1950s and 60s where they tested psychedelics, hypnosis, and torture methods to control human behavior. Now, officially DXM wasn't a part of MK Ultra's public records, but people speculate that because DXM was being developed right around the same time as MK Ultra's height, and because of its unique dissociative and amnesiac effects. Basically, all of this means that it may have been considered a tool for inducing amnesia, breaking identities, or testing dissociation experiments. After all, high-dose DXM can make you forget who you are, separate your mind from your body, and even make you feel like you're dying or in a simulation. All things that might interest government psych researchers looking to reprogram people. But we don't know if this actually happened. I mean, I don't know. It probably might have, but who's really to say? We don't know. DXM plus sleep deprivation. If regular DXM trips weren't wild enough, some users take it a step further by combining high doses with extreme sleep deprivation, and the results can be very terrifying. Sleep deprivation on its own starts producing hallucinations and cognitive breakdowns after about 24 to 48 hours. Add DXM into the mix and you get layered dissociation stacked on top of psychotic level sleep deprivation. People report seeing fully formed entities, hearing non-stop voices, entering false reality loops, and losing track of which world they're even in. A lot of users who have combined DXM with sleep deprivation talk about total ego death, where they forget they even exist as a person. Some describe being trapped in endless waking dreams where they repeatedly think they've woken up only to discover they're still in a hallucinated lair. It's like being stuck inside a Russian nesting doll of your own brain. DXM plus LSD equals nightmare. While some people experiment with combining psychedelics, mixing DXM with LSD, or any strong hallucinogen, is widely considered one of the most dangerous and mentally overwhelming combinations you can do. Both drugs distort reality, but in very different ways. LSD pushes visuals, ego dissolution, and cosmic thinking, while DXM scrambles sensory input, dissociates the body, and creates robotic, detached mental states. Together, they amplify each other's worst traits: ultra-intense hallucination, severe looping, identity confusion, and extreme time distortion. Trip reports from this combo are full of users entering horrific recursive loops, where they forget what drug they even took, question if they're alive, and feel trapped inside endless cycles of hallucinated death, rebirth, and complete loss of identity. Many describe being unable to distinguish thought from reality, like their mind is simultaneously existing in multiple universes that contradict each other. Okay, here's a good one. High-dose DXM seizures. At very high doses, think 2,000 milligrams plus, some DXM users report experiencing seizures or seizure-like episodes during trips. These can take different forms. Sometimes it's full tonic-clonic seizures with convulsions and loss of consciousness. Other times it's more subtle, muscle spasms, uncontrolled shaking, or rigid paralysis. Either way, this happens because high doses of DXM not only overwhelm NMDA receptors, but also begin affecting other neurotransmitter systems involved in motor control and brain stability. Seizures on DXM are particularly dangerous because many users are already physically compromised during these high-dose trips. Dehydrated, sleep-deprived, possibly malnourished, or mixing with other substances. And since high doses can also cause amnesia, some users don't even fully remember the seizure happening. DXM entity possession. Here's where we fully cross into occult horror territory. Some high-dose DXM users claim that while tripping, they experience possession by external entities. This isn't just seeing beings, they report feeling like something enters them and takes over their thoughts, or their actions, or sometimes even their speech. Some describe the feeling as sharing their body with another mind, while others say they fully lost control, watching helplessly as their own body moved, spoke, or reacted under the control of something else. These possession experiences are usually accompanied by terrifying sensory distortions, like hearing distorted voices, unrecognizable language, or mechanical gibberish being injected into their thoughts. For some, the feeling passes once the trip ends, but others actually report like lingering trauma, feeling like whatever entered them left a permanent mark on their psyche. It's terrifying. The infamous 3,000 milligram DXM trip. Every subculture has its legends, and for DXM users, one of the most notorious is the 3,000 milligram trip, an absurdly high dose that's crossed into internet folklore. While most people trip on 300 to 600 milligrams, and serious users push 1,000 milligrams, 3,000 milligrams is way beyond safe limits. People who've attempted it report total loss of physical control, intense time loops, ego death, full blackouts, and hours-long amnesiac periods. The most famous reports of 3,000 milligram doses involve people fully disconnecting from reality, speaking nonsense words and crawling on the floor, even urinating on themselves or convulsing while trapped in infinite hallways and bizarre shifting alien landscapes. That shit's fucked up, bro. If you do that, you're already crazy, I think. DXM and death flashbacks. At high doses, DXM has a nasty way of forcing users to relive traumatic or suppressed memories. Some users report that during their trips, they're suddenly thrown into vivid, crystal clear replays of painful childhood events, or emotional traumas or near-death experiences they've had earlier in life. Even more unsettling is that some people report experiencing entire false memories of their own deaths, watching themselves die in hyper-realistic hallucinations. These moments often feel deeply spiritual or existential, forcing users to contemplate mortality in a way that sticks with them a lot longer even after they sober up. DXM glitches in reality. On high doses, many DXM users report that reality itself begins glitching out, almost like they're inside a broken simulation. Objects can flicker and time can stutter, and people may briefly teleport from one position to another in their vision, and entire environments may rapidly switch without any clear transition. The glitch effect is sometimes paired with a terrifying sense that, like, something is wrong with the fabric of reality itself, which is, I can't even imagine. DXM static people. Another weird recurring hallucination on high-dose DXM trips involves static people, figures that appear human-shaped but are made entirely of flickering static or white noise. These beings often don't speak or move, they simply stand and exist like corrupted data in a simulation. Some users report that these static people seem to pulse or buzz or flicker like broken TV channels. Others feel the static people are aware of them but choose not to engage. DXM as a gateway to hell. Some DXM users who have pushed into extreme doses describe being transported into realms they can only describe as literal hell. These aren't just bad trips, they involve highly detailed nightmarish landscapes filled with endless suffering, warped versions of reality, grotesque beings, and overwhelming despair. Some users report hearing screaming, demonic voices, or seeing horrific visions of mutilation and eternal punishment. These hell realms leave people deeply shaken, often with long-lasting psychological scars. For some, it feels like they've briefly visited a realm of suffering that exists independently of their own mind. And that was Layer 5, guys. Let's get into Layer 6 now. Okay, starting in Layer 6, we're going to start with DXM black market formulas. In the darker corners of drug forums and encrypted chats, there are rumors of black market DXM analogs, chemical variants that are stronger, purer, and far more dangerous than what's sold in pharmacies. Some say these analogs were developed for pharmaceutical labs but never released. Others claim that rogue chemists synthesized them to amplify dissociative effects, sometimes mixing DXM with traces of ketamine or PCP derivatives. These versions supposedly produce trips that go beyond the fourth plateau, causing users to black out and wake up hours later with complete memory loss and lingering hallucinations. There's no confirmed proof these analogs are being circulated widely, but certain users online have posted photos of unlabeled capsules, mystery syrups, or custom blended powders claiming to contain hyper DXM. In some cases, trip reports associated with these samples are far darker, weirder, and less coherent than anything seen from over-the-counter DXM. The DXM entity world conspiracy. At some point, enough DXM users started reporting meeting the same types of beings, like we've talked about. The angels, shadow people, static people, cold observers, and eventually a theory emerged that they all come from the same place. The idea is that high doses of DXM allow users to tune into a shared entity layer of reality, a realm that exists in parallel to our own but is usually invisible to sober minds. According to this theory, everyone who hits the fourth plateau isn't hallucinating randomly, they're accessing a consistent alternative dimension populated by real sentient beings. Some say this world is ancient and others believe it's digital, like a forgotten subdomain of the simulation that we call life. And the key detail is that the entities seem aware of us, but not necessarily always pleased by our presence. They're not thrilled we keep breaking through. And this belief isn't just a weird theory, it's influenced how some people approach DXM. They prepare for trips like psychic explorations. They greet the entities, they leave offerings, and they believe that if you go too deep too often, you might not ever come back. Alright guys, that was the DXM iceberg. I hope you enjoyed it. This was a great one, a very fun one for me to make, so yeah, let's say goodbye. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Leave a comment, leave a like, you know, all that stuff. Subscribe for more videos, and I really hope you enjoyed this. So everybody have a great, amazing, wonderful wonderful night and sweet dreams.